"You're here only as staff," she said, but the mafia boss's kindness made her cry at night. The iron gates of the Rossi estate were something out of a Gothic novel, a 20-foot-tall declaration of power and privacy that made the towering stone wall around the property seem almost polite as the taxi idled, waiting for clearance. Rachel Mendez stared at them, her knuckles white on the handle of her worn suitcase. This was it. The end of the line or the start of a new one. She could not decide which, and frankly, she was too exhausted to care. She was here for one reason, the salary, and the live-in part, a salary that would finally allow her to pay off the crippling debts her ex-husband, Marco, had left her with, and a roof over her head that he could not find. She had $3,420 to her name, a pristine, professional resume, and a spine made of salvaged steel. Everything else, her apartment, her car, her confidence was gone. A man in a sharp black suit with an earpiece that was not for show waved the taxi through. The grounds were immaculate, a rolling expanse of green that screamed old money, not new. The house itself was more of a fortress, a sprawling Italianate mansion of pale stone and dark, watchful windows. Rachel paid the driver, pulling her own 2 suitcases from the trunk before the guard could offer. She would not show weakness. She would not accept help. She was not a guest. She was staff. She repeated the word in her head. Staff. It was a shield. She was led through a side entrance, into a house that was surprisingly quiet. No shouting, no chaos, just the distant hum of industry and the scent of lemon oil and old-world luxury. She was escorted to a large, oak-paneled study to wait for her new employer. Dominic Rossi, the man the tabloids called the Silent Dawn, the man rumored to have made 3 rivals disappear in a single night, the man whose name was whispered in fear by politicians and in reverence by his people. Rachel expected a brute in a pinstripe suit, loud and dripping with cologne. The man who entered was not that. He was tall, dressed in a simple, perfectly tailored dark gray suit and a white shirt with no tie. His black hair was cut short, his face clean-shaven. He might have been handsome in a severe way, but his stillness was what struck her. He moved with a predator's economy, no wasted gestures. He sat behind his massive desk and simply watched her for a long moment. There was no smile, no false welcome. "Miss Mendez," he said. His voice was a low baritone, smooth but laced with a gravelly texture. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Mr. Rossi, thank you for seeing me." Her voice was crisp, professional. She placed her portfolio on the desk. "My references are in order." He did not look at it. His eyes, a dark, unreadable brown, stayed on her face. "You have an impressive history. The governor's ball, the Met benefit. You are, if I may say, overqualified to organize a few charity dinners and my sister's wedding." Rachel met his gaze. "I am thorough. Mr. Rossi, I leave nothing to chance. Your estate requires a full-time, live-in coordinator to manage the sheer volume of social and professional events you host. A freelancer cannot provide that level of seamless integration. I can..." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. She saw the heavy, simple gold ring on his right hand. No diamonds, no flash, just weight. "You're also running," he stated. It was not a question. A cold dart of fear shot through her, but she did not let it show. "I don't know what you mean. I am moving forward in my career. Your last address was a women's shelter in the city. Before that, a penthouse I happen to know Marco Leonetti still occupies. You are not moving forward. Miss Mendez, you are escaping." Rachel stood up, her professionalism a brittle shell. "Mr. Rossi, my personal life has no bearing on my ability to do this job. If this is not a good fit, I will see myself out." She had her hand on the doorknob when his voice stopped her. "Sit down." It was not a request, but it was not a shout either. It was a simple, quiet command, backed by an authority that rippled through the air. She turned, her heart hammering. He was toying with her. This was the manipulation she had been waiting for. The calm was just a prelude to the storm. Marco had been calm like this, right before he threw the lamp. She remained standing. "I prefer to stand." A flicker of something, was it amusement, crossed his face. It was gone as quickly as it came. The last coordinator quit because she said the environment was too intense. The guards, the hours, the nature of my business. "I am not her," Rachel said, her voice tight. "I am here to coordinate events. That is all. I don't see, I don't hear, I don't speak, unless it is about floral arrangements or catering." Dominic Rossi stared at her for another long count. She felt like he was x-raying her soul, seeing the cracks and the fear she worked so hard to hide. "You're hired, Miss Mendez," he said finally. "Your salary is as we discussed. Your quarters are in the West Wing, separate entrance. You will answer only to me. Sophia, my head of household, will show you around. Welcome to the family." The word family hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He had not checked her references. He had not even opened her portfolio. He had hired her because he knew she was trapped. He knew she had nowhere else to go. She mistook his respect for her boundaries as a deeper, more insidious form of control. He was not just hiring an event planner. He was acquiring a possession. She was determined to prove him wrong. The tour with Sophia was a blur of understated luxury. A ballroom that could hold 300, a dining room that seated 60, acres of gardens, and staff. So many staff, all of them quiet, efficient, and, Rachel noted, slightly afraid. She saw the men in suits posted at hallways, by the pool, at the gates. They were not security guards, they were soldiers. She heard them murmur as she passed, "The new one, for Don Rossi." The whispers made her skin crawl. The estate was beautiful, but it was a prison. Her own quarters, however, were a relief. A small, 2-room apartment with its own kitchenette and a simple private balcony. It was clean, impersonal, and, most importantly, had a heavy deadbolt on the door. She locked it the moment Sophia left. She was 3 days into her new job, mapping the layout of the main terrace for an upcoming luncheon. When he approached her, he was one of the men she had seen by the pool, all muscles and swagger, wearing a silk shirt that was 2 buttons too open. "You're the new coordinator," he said, blocking her path. His eyes roamed her body, lingering. "I'm Rico. I handle acquisitions for Mr. Rossi." "Miss Mendez," Rachel corrected him. Stepping to the side, he mirrored her. "Right, Miss Mendez. You know, a live-in job has a lot of perks. If you get lonely in that big apartment, you let me know. I can be very accommodating." He smiled, a flash of white and gold. Rachel's blood ran cold. It was the same line, the same oily charm. "I'm here to work, Mr. Rico. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to measure these archways." She tried to push past him, but he put a hand on her arm. "Hey, don't be like that, doll. We're all family here. I'm just being friendly." "Take your hand off me." Her voice was a low whisper. "Or what?" he challenged, his smile widening. "Or you will find yourself coordinating traffic in the East Side shipping yards, permanently." The voice came from behind Rico, and it was as cold as a grave. Dominic Rossi stood there, hands clasped behind his back. He had not raised his voice. He had not moved, but the effect was instantaneous. Rico's hand flew off Rachel's arm as if he had been burned. All color drained from his face. "Don Rossi, I was just welcoming the new girl." Dominic took one slow step forward. He never looked at Rachel. His eyes were locked on Rico, and they were utterly flat. "Her name is Miss Mendez. She is staff. She's under my protection, which means she is invisible to you. You will not look at her. You will not speak to her. You will not breathe in her direction unless it concerns the business of this house. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, Don Rossi, Crystal. It won't happen again. My apologies." Rico was sweating, his bravado vanishing into the humid air. "Go," Dominic said. Rico fled. Dominic turned his gaze to Rachel. She was trembling, a mixture of rage and a fear she had not felt in months. He did not step closer. "My apologies. "Miss Mendez," he said, his voice now formal, "that was unacceptable. It will not happen again." He turned and walked back into the house, leaving her alone on the terrace. Her heart was a trapped bird in her chest. She was not afraid of Rico. She was terrified of the man who had just dismissed him. The absolute, effortless, and lethal power he wielded was more frightening than any cheap threat. That night, she could not sleep. The deadbolt on her door felt flimsy. She was reviewing vendor contracts in the main kitchen, long after the night staff had left, when she heard voices from the adjacent staff lounge. It was Dominic and one of the housemaids, a young woman named Maria. Rachel shrank back into the pantry, not wanting to be seen. Maria was crying, her voice thick with panic. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Rossi. I missed the shift, I know, but my son, his fever, the hospital." "Hush, Maria." Dominic's voice was low, gentle. It was so different from the voice on the terrace that Rachel almost did not recognize it. "How is Leo? Is the fever down?" "No, it is worse. The doctors say. They say he needs a specialist from Boston. I have no—" The woman broke down in a sob. Rachel heard a chair scrape, heard Dominic shushing the woman gently. "The bills are paid. Maria, all of them. The specialist you mentioned, Dr. Evans? He will be at the Children's Hospital tomorrow morning at 9. He's the best. He's flying in tonight." "But how? I cannot pay." "It is handled," Dominic said firmly, but not unkindly. "You are family. You do not worry about this. You worry about Leo. You take the week off. You take 2. Your job will be here when you get back. Now go. My driver will take you to the hospital." There was a moment of silence. Then Maria's tearful, "God bless you, Mr. Rossi. God bless you." Rachel leaned against the pantry shelf. Her own breath caught in her throat. She waited until she heard the main door close, then slipped out of the kitchen and back to her room. She sat on her bed, her mind reeling. It was a performance. It had to be. Marco used to do things like that. He had paid her mother's rent for 3 months. Right after he broke 2 of Rachel's ribs, he'd charmed her family, her friends, made them all believe he was a saint, which only made her feel crazier. Charm was a weapon. Kindness was a lever, this Dominic Rossi. He was just smoother. He was buying loyalty from his staff, making them indebted to him. It was just another form of control. She would not be fooled. She would do her job, save her money, and get out. Her first big test was a month later, a massive fundraiser for a local hospital. 200 of the state's most powerful people. Rachel was in her element. She wore a simple, severe black dress, her hair pulled into a tight chignon, a clipboard her only accessory. She was a ghost, a professional, ensuring everything ran perfectly. It was near the end of the night, and she was doing a final check by the catering entrance when a hand landed heavily on her lower back. "Well, now, you must be the one who made all this magic happen." She turned. It was Senator Harrison, a man known for his wandering hands and his large donations. He was drunk, his eyes glassy, his breath hot with whiskey. "I'm glad you enjoyed the evening." "Senator," Rachel said, trying to step away. His hand tightened, fingers digging into her hip. "I certainly am now. A pretty little thing like you shouldn't be hiding in the shadows. Why don't you and I have a real drink? Celebrate your success." "Thank you, Senator, but I'm working." She tried to pry his fingers off her dress. "Nonsense. I insist." He pulled her closer, his face leaning in. "She doesn't drink on the clock. Senator?" The voice was quiet, but it sliced through the senator's drunken fog. Dominic Rossi was there, a glass of water in his hand. He looked bored, as if he were discussing the weather. The senator's hand dropped from Rachel's back as if zapped by electricity. "Dominic, my boy, just congratulating your wonderful staff here. A brilliant event, brilliant." "Your wife is looking for you, Senator," Dominic said, his smile a thin, cold line. "I believe she's by the main bar. She seemed distressed. The senator's face paled. "Ah, yes, well, good to see you. Dominic." He shuffled away, melting into the crowd. The noise of the party seemed to recede, leaving just the two of them in the alcove. Dominic turned his dark eyes on her. They were searching, and for a second, she thought she saw concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low. The question, the quiet protection, the way the senator had scurried away, it was all too much. It felt like a cage, just a different kind of cage. Her walls, the ones she had built brick by painstaking brick, slammed into place. "I'm fine," she said, her voice clipped and cold. She straightened her dress, avoiding his eyes. "He was a guest. I was handling it. He shouldn't have put his hands on you." "I'm staff. Mr. Rossi. That's all." She finally looked at him, her gaze as icy as she could make it. "It's part of the job in your world, isn't it? Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on the valets." She brushed past him, not waiting for a reply, not looking back to see the flicker of something in his eyes. She held herself together for 2 more hours, until the last car had pulled away, until the last of the catering staff had left. She walked back to her apartment, her steps quick and sure. She locked the door. She slid the deadbolt. She turned on the shower, hot, scalding, and only then, with the sound of the water drowning out the world, did she slide down the tiled wall and let herself cry. They were not the tears she was used to, not the hot tears of fear and pain that Marco had caused. These were silent, confusing, angry tears. She was crying because a part of her, a small, stupid, broken part, had wanted to lean into Dominic Rossi's protection. She was crying because when he asked if she was all right, her first instinct had been to nod. She was crying because, for the first time in 6 years, she had felt unequivocally, completely safe, and it terrified her. The man who made her feel that way was a criminal, a monster, and she was just staff. From his study window, which overlooked the small courtyard outside her apartment, Dominic watched her light go on, and then, much later, go off. He had seen her flee the ballroom, her back ramrod straight. He had felt the sting of her words. "I'm staff, that's all." He had run her background check again that night. He knew every detail about Marco Leonetti, the restraining orders she had filed and then withdrawn, the hospital visit for a fall down the stairs. He knew she was a survivor. He respected the walls she built. He had walls of his own. He would watch and he would wait. He would keep her safe, whether she wanted him to or not. A month passed. The grand charity gala, the crown jewel of the Rossi family's legitimate social calendar, was upon them. Rachel had been a whirlwind, a phantom of efficiency. She organized 500 guests, a 17-piece orchestra, a 5-course meal, and security for 3 different political figures. She was flawless. The staff, even Dominic's personal men, treated her with a new, profound respect. 5 minutes before his opening speech, Dominic stood in the wings, rolling his shoulders under his tuxedo. He hated these nights. He hated the fake smiles and the grasping hands. He fumbled with the cufflink on his right wrist. The shirt was new, the starched cotton stiff and unforgiving. "Allow me, sir?" He froze. She was there, materializing from the shadows. She must have been on her way to the sound booth. She stepped into his space before he could react. The professional in her, the coordinator, had seen a problem and moved to fix it. "It's the fabric. It's stiff," he found himself saying, his voice rough. He smelled her perfume, a faint, clean scent of linen and something like lemons. "It'll relax," she murmured, her eyes focused on his wrist. She did not look at his face. Her fingers were cool, deft and surprisingly steady as they worked the small platinum link through the thick cotton. Then, her knuckles brushed the skin of his wrist. A jolt, like touching a live wire, shot up his arm. He heard her breath hitch. He felt his own pulse kick, a heavy, sudden throb right beneath her fingertips. She got the link through, and her hand pulled back as if she had been burned. Her head snapped up, and her eyes, wide, startled, and terrifyingly clear, met his. In that 1 second, the air crackled, the noise of the gala, the orchestra, the entire world faded to a dull roar. He was not her boss. She was not his staff. He saw a woman, strong and scared, and she saw a man, not the monster she had tried so hard to see. "Thank you, Miss Mendez," he said, his voice a low rumble. Rachel could not find her voice. She just nodded, her throat tight, and then she turned and walked away, her pace so fast it was just short of a run. She made it to the sound booth, her lungs burning. She was breathless, and she was terrified. Not of him, never, she realized with a sickening lurch, of him. She was terrified of herself, of the warmth that one simple, accidental touch had ignited in the cold, dead center of her heart. She leaned against the wall, her professional mask crumbling. She couldn't. She was staff. She repeated the words, a desperate, failing prayer. After the gala, a shift occurred, as subtle and undeniable as a change in the wind. The terror Rachel had felt from their brushed hands had settled into a low, humming awareness. She'd thrown herself back into her work, using the logistics of an upcoming donor breakfast as a shield, but she had begun to watch him. She stopped seeing just the silent dawn. She saw the man who paused his high-stakes phone call, the one where his voice was low and hard, the one that made his associates sweat, to kneel and patiently listen to a young housemaid's tearful explanation about a broken, priceless vase. Rachel waited for the explosion. Instead, Dominic had simply asked if she was cut. When the girl shook her head, he had touched her shoulder and said, "It's a thing, Lucia. Things can be replaced. You cannot." He had given her the rest of the day off and told her to get a cup of tea. Rachel saw him with the groundskeepers, men with dirt under their nails and decades of sun on their faces. He would walk the grounds, not as a king surveying his land, but as a man asking questions. He listened, truly listened. His head tilted slightly as they spoke of irrigation issues or a blight on the roses. He spoke to them with the same quiet respect he used for senators, and they, in turn, gave him an easy, unforced loyalty. He was a man who gave second chances, a young guard, new and nervous, had missed a checkpoint in the security rotation. It was a serious offense. Rachel overheard the man's supervisor, Rico, tearing into him, promising he would be back in the gutter by nightfall. 10 minutes later, Dominic emerged from his study, spoke to the supervisor, and then called the young guard in. An hour later, the guard was still employed, now assigned to a less critical post, but not fired, not exiled. Dominic Rossi listened more than he spoke, and that, Rachel realized, was the true source of his power. His silence was not empty, it was absorbent. He took in everything, and in a world of loud, posturing men, his quiet was a weapon. It was also, she was terrified to admit, a comfort. He summoned her to his study 2 weeks after the gala. "Miss Mendez, please, sit." She sat, her back straight, clipboard in her lap. "Is there an issue with the breakfast preparations, Mr. Rossi?" "The breakfast will be fine," he said, waving a hand. He was, as always, behind his desk, but he seemed different, less like a boss, more like a man with a problem. "The Rossi Family Foundation dinner is in 8 weeks. It is our most important event of the year." Rachel nodded. "I have the preliminary files. Your sister, Maria, has always overseen it, correct?" "My sister is 6 months pregnant and, as of this morning, has been ordered to bed rest. She is dramatic," he said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "But the doctors are not—" He leaned forward. "I need someone to take over, completely. The venue, the auction, the guests, everything." Rachel's blood ran cold. The foundation dinner was not just an event, it was the family's crown jewel. The one night the entire Rossi world revolved around. It was personal. It was family. Mr. Rossi, she said, her voice stiff. I am an event coordinator. I am not a family liaison. An event of that magnitude and personal significance. It would be better served by someone within your circle. I don't want someone within my circle. His voice was flat, cutting off her protest. I want someone efficient. I want someone who is not afraid to tell a 70-year-old capo that his wife cannot be seated next to the mayor. I want someone who understands that the color of the napkins matters, even if I don't. He paused, his dark eyes locking on hers. My sister recommended you. She said you were the only person in this house who wasn't afraid of her, or me. She wanted to say no. Her entire being screamed to run, to keep the boundary. This was too close. This was how they pulled you in, how they made you family before they destroyed you. I don't know, she said, her professionalism faltering. He did not argue. He did not command. He simply looked at her, his expression unreadable. My sister trusts you, Rachel, and I trust her judgment. And that was it. Not a threat, not a manipulation, just trust. A trust he was placing in her, a woman he knew was running from her past, a woman who worked for him. He was giving her the keys to his family's entire public image. She had refused because she was afraid. She agreed because he trusted her. I'll need the full ledgers, all vendor contracts, and the guest list from the past 5 years, she said, her voice all business again. He smiled, a small, real smile. Whatever you need, it's yours. The next 6 weeks were a blur. They worked in a way she had never worked with a client before. He was not a distant employer. He was a partner. They were in the grand ballroom at midnight, Rachel on a ladder adjusting a spotlight, and him below, holding the heavy fixture, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt sleeves rolled up his forearms. They argued over seating charts in the library, the scent of old books and his faint cologne filling the air. No, he said, his finger tapping a name. Judge Alito cannot be in the same room as Councilman Vela, let alone the same table. Then Vela has to be moved to the terrace overflow. He's a lower-tier donor, Rachel argued, her pen hovering. He's also my cousin's brother-in-law, and if I move him, my aunt won't speak to me for a year. Dominic sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Rachel fought a smile. Then your aunt is going to be very upset, because the judge is the keynote speaker, and I am not putting him in a corner. He looked at her, a flicker of genuine amusement in his eyes. Fine, but you're telling my aunt. The small, charged moments began to stack up, each one a tiny chip in her wall. They were at a downtown hotel, inspecting the ballroom. It was crowded, a press event for another organization just letting out. The lobby was a sea of bodies. As they tried to navigate to the elevators, a man shouldered past, nearly knocking Rachel off her feet. Dominic's hand was at her back in an instant. It wasn't a grab. It was a firm, warm, possessive pressure on the small of her back, just above her hip. He did not say, "Excuse me." He simply moved, and the crowd parted for him, for them. His hand stayed there, guiding her, shielding her. Long after the crowd had thinned, every nerve ending in her body was aware of his palm, the heat of it seeping through the thin silk of her blouse. When they finally reached the elevator, he removed it, and she felt the absence like a sudden chill. Another time, they were hours away from a press conference to announce the charity's headline performer. He was standing by the window, going over his notes. His tie, a dark blue silk, was slightly crooked. It was driving her insane. Before she could stop herself, she stepped forward. "Mr. Rossi, your tie." He looked down, then at her, confused. "Allow me." She was in his space before she could second-guess it. Her fingers, betrayingly steady, brushed the front of his shirt. The cotton was warm from his skin. She could feel the solid muscle of his chest beneath it. She focused on the knot of silk, her knuckles brushing his throat. He stood perfectly, utterly still. He was so tall. She had to look up. His eyes were not on his tie. They were on her. His gaze so intense, so focused. It felt like a physical touch. He smelled like soap and starch and something uniquely him, something dangerous and warm. She fixed the knot. There. Her voice was a breathy whisper. "Thank you, Rachel," he said, his voice a low rumble. She stepped back, her heart hammering. She had to grip her clipboard to stop her hands from shaking. One afternoon, she was in the kitchen, laughing with Maria, the housemaid, over a spilled bag of flour. Dominic walked in, and Rachel's laughter died in her throat, her face snapping back into its professional mask. He paused, his expression unreadable, and she saw a flicker of... was it disappointment? She punished herself for it later. She had been laughing, giggling like a fool. She had let her guard down. Marco had loved it when she laughed. He said it was his favorite sound. He also said he was the only one allowed to make her laugh. The memory came, sharp and cold, and she scrubbed the smile from her memory, locking it away. They were in his study, a week before the dinner. It was almost 2 a.m. They were both exhausted, the floor around them covered in auction item lists and donor profiles. She was rubbing her temples, a headache building. "We're missing something," she muttered. "The heart. The auction is all cars and jewelry. It feels cold." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. He was staring at a photo in a silver frame on his desk, one Rachel had never seen him touch. This foundation. It was for my mother. Rachel stilled. He had never spoken of his family in personal terms. "She died when I was 12, he said, his voice quiet, tracing the frame with one finger. "In a hospital like the one we're supporting. She loved gardens. She used to say that flowers were proof that even in the dirt, something beautiful could grow." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time, she saw no walls, no Don, no boss, just a man. She was the one who was real. The rest of us, we were just noise. She wanted to build a rooftop garden at the hospital, a place where the children could feel the sun. She died before she could. Rachel's breath caught. His vulnerability was so rare, so raw, it felt like a wound. She saw him not as the monster, but as the 12-year-old boy who had lost his mother. "We should do that," Rachel said softly. "What?" "We'll make it the headline auction item, the Julia Rossi Rooftop Garden. We'll fund the entire project in her name. That's the heart. That's what's missing." He looked at her, his gaze searching. "Yes," he said, his voice thick. "Yes, that's it." She wanted to reach out, to touch his hand, to offer a comfort. She clenched her fists instead. That was a line she could not cross. The call she had dreaded for a year came 2 days later. She was in her apartment, her one sanctuary. Her private phone, the one on a burner app, vibrated on the table. A text from a number she did not recognize. "You look good in black. Mia Cara. Suits you. But you always look better with nothing on at all." Ice water flooded her veins. He had seen her. At the gala? At the press conference? Another text. "Did you think you could hide from me? You are mine. Rachel. You will always be mine. That palace you're in? It's just a bigger cage." She dropped the phone as if it were a snake. She ran to the bathroom and was sick. Her hands were shaking so violently she could barely turn on the faucet. He had found her. He knew where she was. She deleted the messages, her thumb slipping on the screen. She told no one. This was her poison, her shame. She would not let it touch this new life. She would not give him that power. But she was not as good at hiding it as she thought. The next morning, she was jumpy. She spilled her coffee when a door slammed. She flinched when Rico, the man from the terrace, walked into the room too quickly. Dominic saw it all. He found her by the floral trucks, arguing with a vendor. "Miss Mendez, a word?" She followed him, her nerves screaming. "The city is complicated," he began, his tone casual. "All business. The vendors, the deliveries. It's a lot of running around. It's inefficient for you to be waiting on car services. I'm managing Mr. Rossi. I've assigned Luca to you, and he's my best driver. He will take you wherever you need to go. Vendor meetings, venue checks, your personal errands. He held up a hand as she started to protest. It's not a suggestion. It's for efficiency and for safety. The city is not what it used to be. You will not go anywhere alone. She looked at him, searching for the manipulation, but his eyes were just steady. He knew. He didn't know what, but he sensed her anxiety. He knew she was a target. This was not a cage. This was a shield. For the first time, she did not fight it. Thank you, Mr. Rossi, she whispered. The night of the dinner was flawless. Rachel, in a simple, elegant dark green dress, was a phantom of control. The Julia Rossi rooftop garden was announced, and in a single, tearful, 10-minute bidding war, they raised over $3 million for it. The last guest was gone. The orchestra had packed up. Rachel was standing on the main terrace, the cool night air a balm on her hot skin. She kicked off her heels, wiggling her toes on the cold stone. She had done it. I thought I'd find you here. Dominic walked out onto the terrace. He had undone his bow tie, and his jacket was off. He held 2 flutes of champagne. A toast, he said, handing one to her, to the Julia Rossi garden and to the woman who built it. I just organized it, she said, taking the glass. The champagne was cold, the bubbles a sharp tingle. No, he said. You understood it. You understood her. Thank you. Rachel. They drank in silence, the city lights twinkling below them. The air was charged, humming with the energy of the night and something else, something that had been building between them for weeks. She felt a bubble of, not laughter, but a light, giddy relief. Well, she said, looking up at him, I'm just glad Senator Harrison kept his hands to himself. I had Luca block his path to the bar. Dominic stopped, his glass halfway to his lips, and then he laughed. It was not his polite chuckle. It was a real, deep, genuine laugh that rumbled from his chest and echoed in the night air. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. It startled her, and it made her stomach do a slow, dangerous flip. The laughter faded, but the warmth remained. He was looking at her, his dark eyes soft in the moonlight. He was closer than she had realized. You won't be a problem again, he said, his voice a low vibration. The tension was a physical thing, a wire pulled taut between them. She was looking at his mouth. He was looking at hers. She saw him sway, just a fraction, toward her, and she found herself leaning in. This is what she wanted, this quiet, this strength, this man. The thought was so clear, so terrifying that she recoiled as if struck. She stepped back, her hand flying to her chest, her arms crossing. The champagne flute was suddenly a weapon, a shield. She started, her voice shaking. This was how it began. The protection, the kindness, the laughter, and then the cage. You don't want someone broken like me, she whispered, the words torn from her. It was the truest thing she had said in years. He did not step forward. He did not try to reassure her or charm her. He just stood there, his gaze holding hers, a deep, aching sadness in his eyes that matched her own. Maybe I'm tired of things that are perfect. Rachel, he said, his voice rough. Maybe I'm tired of things that are polished and shiny and empty. He took a step closer, but not to touch her, just to be heard. Maybe I want someone real. He did not press her. He did not demand an answer. He simply held her gaze, offering the words as a statement, not a line. She had no defense for that. Good night, Mr. Rossi, she managed, her voice thick. Get some rest. Rachel, you earned it. She fled. She walked, her back straight, until she was out of his sight, and then she ran. She ran to her apartment, locked the door, and slid the deadbolt. She leaned against the wood, the tears coming. They were not tears of confusion this time. They were hot, bitter tears of fear. She was crying because he had called her real. She was crying because he had seen the cracks, the broken pieces, and he had not turned away. He had, in fact, leaned in. She was crying because, for one terrifying, crystal-clear moment on that balcony, She had wanted him to, and that, she knew, was the most dangerous thing of all. The world shifted after the night of the charity dinner. Rachel's declaration on the balcony, "Maybe I want someone real," had hung in the air between them, a promise and a threat, and her whispered, "You don't want someone broken," had been a wall he refused to acknowledge. In the weeks that followed, Dominic Rossi did not press her. He did not corner her or charm her or attempt to leverage the new, fragile awareness that thrummed between them. He simply worked with her. But the estate had changed, or she had. She was no longer the new girl. She was Miss Mendez. And then, somewhere along the way, Miss Rachel, the change was subtle. Maria, the housemaid whose son's medical bills Dominic had paid, began bringing her a small cup of espresso in the mornings. "The way you like it, Miss Rachel," she would murmur, a warmth in her eyes that was no longer just gratitude, but genuine affection. Lucia, the young maid who had broken the priceless vase, left a single, perfect white gardenia on her desk every Monday, a silent, fragrant thank you. Even the guards, the stone-faced men in sharp suits, no longer looked through her. They nodded. "Miss Mendez," they would say, some even cracking a tight, respectful smile. Luca, the driver, treated her with a fierce, almost brotherly protection, always opening her door, always asking if the temperature in the car was to her liking. She was becoming part of the rhythm. She had a seat at the massive staff kitchen table, and no one went quiet when she walked in. She was folded into the lifeblood of the house, a vital organ that kept the entire complex system running smoothly. Dominic, for his part, solidified her position. At a dinner for his senior associates, men like Rico, men whose eyes still held a mix of suspicion and wariness for her, Dominic had raised his glass. "To Miss Mendez," he'd said, his voice carrying across the long, formal dining room, "who has, in 3 months, transformed this house and the Rossi Foundation. She has my complete confidence. Her decisions are my decisions." The message was clear. She was not just staff, she was his. The thought should have terrified her. It should have felt like Marco's possessiveness, but it did not. It felt different. It felt like a shield. The false sense of security, the feeling of being in a fortress, made her reckless. It made her forget the world outside the iron gates. She had a small storage unit near her old apartment, a 10 by 10 concrete box where she had shoved the last remnants of her previous life. Photographs of her mother, her grandmother's rocking chair, winter clothes, things she could not bear to part with and had been too panicked to retrieve. She had to go. She had to finally close that last door. "Luca," she said, as they drove back from a vendor downtown, "I need to make one more stop, a storage facility on Elm." He stiffened. "Mister, Rossi prefers I clear any non-scheduled stops. Miss Mendez, that is not a good neighborhood." "It's fine. Luca, I just need 10 minutes. You can wait at the gate. I have to do this alone." She needed this one last piece of her old life to be handled by the old Rachel, the one who was not protected. He argued. She insisted. Finally, he relented, his face a mask of worry. 10 minutes. I will be at the entrance to the parking lot. You call me if anything." She nodded, forcing a smile. The facility was a grim 3-story building of peeling beige paint and roll-up metal doors. The air in the parking lot was stale, smelling of old trash and gasoline. The sound of her own heels on the cracked asphalt was too loud. She made it to her unit, punched in the code, and rolled up the heavy door. The dust-filled space, the smell of mothballs and memory, hit her like a physical blow. She was weaker than she thought. She grabbed the first box, the one marked Photos, and turned to leave. "Leaving so soon? You did not even say hello." The voice. It was the voice from her nightmares, the one that still whispered in her head when she was tired and afraid. She turned, her blood turning to ice. Marco. He was leaning against the opposite wall, all fake tan charm and predatory smile. He was thinner than she remembered, his eyes more hollow, but the expensive suit and the smell of his cloying, sharp cologne were the same. "Marco," she whispered, her throat closing. How did you find you? It was not easy. You're living in a fortress, Mia Cara, with a king." He pushed off the wall, his smile fading. "You really upgraded, did not you? From me to him?" I have to go." She tried to step around him. He blocked her path, his hand shooting out and grabbing her arm. His grip was a steel vice. "No, not yet. We need to talk. I miss you. You miss me. You just do not know it yet." "Let go of me, Marco," she said, her voice shaking, all her carefully built strength crumbling. "Or what? Is your new boyfriend going to protect you? He's not here, is he?" He yanked her arm, pulling her hard against his chest. She stumbled, the box of photos falling and scattering at her feet. "You are still my wife, Rachel. In the eyes of God, you are mine." "I'm not," she cried, shoving at his chest. It was the wrong thing to do. His face darkened, the charm evaporated, replaced by the familiar, cold rage she knew so well. He shoved her back, hard. She slammed into the metal door of the storage unit, the impact jarring her teeth, a sharp pain shooting up her spine. "You are nothing without me," he hissed, his face inches from hers, his hand raised. "You are just a broken, stupid I would not finish that sentence. The voice was not Dominic's, it was Luca's. Marco froze. He turned, his hand still raised. Luca was standing at the end of the corridor, not 5 feet away. He was not alone. Another of Dominic's men, a mountain named Angelo, was behind him, blocking the only exit. They were not in uniform. They were in street clothes, but the immaculate press of their shirts, the stillness of their bodies, screamed danger. "This is a private conversation," Marco blustered, trying to regain his footing. Luca took one step forward. He did not look at Marco. He looked at Rachel, his eyes taking in her disheveled hair, her terror. "Mister, Rossi wants you safe. Miss Mendez." "She is coming with me," Marco said, grabbing Rachel's arm again. Luca's hand moved so fast. Rachel barely saw it. He did not grab Marco. He grabbed Marco's wrist, his fingers finding pressure points. Marco screamed, a high, thin sound, and his hand flew open, releasing her. "She is coming with us," Luca said, his voice flat. He stepped between them, a human wall, and gently, firmly guided Rachel back. "Angelo, secure the package." Rachel did not look back. She heard Marco's frantic, "You cannot do this! Do you know who I am?" She heard a single, sickening thud, and then silence. Luca hustled her into the black sedan, which was now parked, motor running, just outside the door. She was shaking, a deep, bone-rattling cold that had nothing to do with the weather. Luca got in the driver's seat. A minute later, Angelo got in the passenger side. What did you—" she whispered. "He's fine, Miss Mendez," Angelo said, his voice a low rumble. "Just sleeping. We retrieved your property, and Mr. Leonetti's," he held up Marco's wallet and his cell phone, "he will not be tracking you again." The drive back to the estate was silent. Rachel stared at her hands, which were still clenched into fists. She had not cried. She was too far gone for tears. When they arrived, Luca did not take her to her apartment. He escorted her, one hand lightly on her elbow, through the main house, to the oak-paneled study. He knocked once, opened the door, and guided her inside. Dominic was not behind his desk. He was standing by the massive fireplace, one hand on the marble mantel, staring into the empty grate. He was still in his suit, but his tie was gone, his collar undone. "Thank you. Luca, that will be all," he said, without turning. The door clicked shut, leaving them in the heavy, oppressive silence. He turned. His face was carved from stone. There was no pity in his eyes. No, "I told you so," just a deep, simmering stillness. He was just there," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I just went for my mother's photos." "He has been tracking you for 6 weeks," Dominic said, his voice flat. He's been paying a clerk at the storage facility to tell him if you ever access the unit. I have had a team on him for 7. They were just slower than I wanted. You had me followed." It was not an accusation. It was a realization. The driver, the safety. It was all real. Yes. The simple, unashamed admission was what broke her. The shaking, which had been a tremor, became a full-body storm. Her knees gave out. She would have collapsed. But he was there. He moved faster than she thought possible, crossing the room in 2 strides, catching her, and lowering her onto the soft leather couch by the fire. He did not hold her. He did not pat her back. He sat beside her, a solid, unmoving presence, and waited. And it all came out. The carefully constructed walls, the professional facade, the years of, "I'm fine?" It all crumbled into dust. She wept. She wept for the woman she had been, for the fear she had lived with, for the shame that clung to her like a shroud. He told me," she gasped, the words torn from her. "He said he was the only one who would ever want. Something so broken. He broke my ribs. 2 days before Christmas. He told everyone I was clumsy. I fell." She was choking on the words, on the memories. He locked me in the apartment for 3 days. Because I smiled at a waiter. She confessed it all, the years of quiet terror, the financial ruin, the isolation. She had never said these words aloud to anyone. Dominic sat in the silence, his face a mask. He just listened. He let her empty herself of all the poison, all the pain. When she was finally done, her sobs reduced to hiccuping breaths. He was not looking at her. He was staring at the empty fireplace again. He was not angry. He was not furious. He was still. It was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. It was a stillness that was older than rage. It was the stillness of an abyss. Finally, he spoke, his voice so quiet she had to strain to hear it. "You will not face him again." He said it not as a promise, but as a fact, a sentence that had been passed. Ever. She looked at him, her eyes raw and swollen. What are you?" He stood, walked to his desk, and picked up his phone. He dialed a number. "Get it done," he said, and hung up. He did not tell her what it was. He did not tell her what would happen. And she, in that moment, realized she did not care. She was so tired of being afraid. She was so tired of running. For the first time, she was willing to let someone else be the monster. She did not ask how. She did not ask where Marco went. 2 days later, she overheard a fragment of a conversation. Florida, a permanent vacation. He was warned. He will not be back. She felt nothing but a slow, cold, quiet relief. She spent the next day in her apartment sleeping, a deep, dreamless, healing sleep. When she woke, the house was quiet. It was early, the sun just beginning to stream through her windows. She was raw, her emotions rubbed bare, but she was lighter. She pulled on a simple, white cotton robe, her hair a tangled mess, her face scrub clean. She padded to her small kitchenette, craving coffee, only to find the pot empty. The smell of real, fresh-brewed coffee and something else, bacon, wafted from the main house, the main kitchen. She followed the scent, her bare feet silent on the cool marble floors. She pushed open the kitchen door. Dominic was there. He was standing at the massive, professional-grade stainless steel stove, a spatula in his hand. He was wearing dark gray sweatpants and a simple black t-shirt that stretched across his shoulders. His feet were bare. He was cooking. He was focused, his movements precise. As he swirled eggs in a small, copper pan, he had not heard her. She just watched, her heart doing a strange, slow, painful lurch. This man, who could order a person's exile with 2 words, was making scrambled eggs. He had set a small table in the breakfast nook, 2 plates, 2 mugs, a small vase with one of Lucia's gardenias in it. He looked up. as if he sensed her. His eyes met hers. He did not look surprised. His gaze traveled over her, the messy hair, the pale face, the simple robe. He saw her. Not Miss Mendez, not the coordinator, but Rachel, bare, raw, vulnerable. He did not smile. He simply nodded toward the table. "You should eat." She sat. He placed a plate in front of her. The eggs were perfect, light and fluffy. The bacon was crisp. He poured her a mug of coffee, black, just the way she liked it, and sat across from her. They ate in silence. It was not the charged silence of the balcony. It was not the heavy silence of his study. It was a simple, domestic, peaceful silence. The clink of a fork on a plate, the sip of coffee. She was not afraid. For the first in her life, she was not afraid. He watched her as she ate, his expression unreadable. When she was done, she put her hands around the warm mug, a small, fragile warmth. He reached across the small table. He did not take her hand. He did not touch her. He just waited. Slowly, gently. His fingers brushed a strand of tangled hair away from her face, tucking it behind her ear. His touch was not a jolt. It was not a spark. It was warmth. It was a simple, profound, human connection. His fingers were slightly rough, warm against her cool skin. She did not pull away. She leaned into it. Just a fraction, a tear she did not know was coming slid down her cheek. He did not wipe it away. He just let his thumb rest for a single second on her temple. He stood, took her plate, and walked to the sink. He came back, and this time, he did not sit opposite her. He sat beside her, in the nook. He did not say, "Are you all right?" He did not say, "It's over." He just looked at her, his dark eyes searching her face, as if he were memorizing it. She was the one who moved. She turned, her body angling toward his. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" His voice was a low rumble. "Being kind?" "I'm not a kind man, Rachel," he said, his voice rough. "You are," she insisted, her voice gaining a small strength. "To me, to Maria, to everyone but the people who deserve." He was closer now. She could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You are not like them," he said. "I am broken," she whispered. The word she had used as a shield, the word Marco had used as a weapon. "You are not broken," he said, his gaze dropping to her mouth. "You are strong, and you are real." He leaned in, slowly, giving her every chance to turn, to flee, to put up a hand. She did not. She was so tired of running. She met him halfway. The kiss was not what she expected. It was not a ravaging, passionate assault. It was a question. It was a landing. His lips were firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. It was a slow, lingering, profound kiss, filled with all the words they had not said, all the longing they had both repressed. It was a kiss that tasted of coffee and safety and a desperate, aching relief. She put her hand on his chest, not to push him away, but to steady herself. She felt his heart, a strong, steady, heavy beat beneath her palm. His hand came up to cup her jaw, his thumb stroking her cheek. The kiss deepened, the gentleness giving way to a low, simmering heat. It was the heat of years of loneliness, the heat of a man who was always in control, finally letting go, the heat of a woman who had never been safe, finally surrendering. He pulled her closer, one strong arm wrapping around her waist, lifting her. He did not lift her to carry her. He lifted her easily, as if she weighed nothing, and sat her on the smooth marble counter. He stood between her knees, his body pressed to hers, his hands tangled in her messy hair. This kiss was different. This was not a question. This was an answer. It was desperate and hungry and raw. It was everything he had held back. It was everything she had locked away. She clung to him, her fingers gripping his t-shirt, her mind, for the first time, blissfully, terrifyingly silent. Then the fear The old, insidious poison trickled back in. This was fast. This was a rescue. This was pity. She pulled back, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her hands on his shoulders. He looked at her, his eyes dark, his pupils blown, his breath as unsteady as hers. "I need," she panted, her voice thick. "I need to know. I need to know this is not pity, that I am not just some broken bird you fixed." His expression hardened, the passion vanished, replaced by a deep, almost painful honesty. He stepped back. He physically, deliberately, stepped away from her, taking his hands from her hair, putting a foot of space between them. He gave her back the control. "It is not pity, Rachel." His voice was rough but absolute. "I do not do pity." He looked at her on the counter, in her simple robe, and his eyes were filled with a raw, undeniable, devastating want. "It is not pity," he repeated, his voice softer, "and I want you when you are ready, not when you are grateful, not when you are scared, when you are ready." He took one more step back, his hands clenched at his sides, as if it were costing him everything. "I'll have Luca take you, wherever you want to go today," he said, his voice all business again, the mask slipping back into place. "Or you can stay here." He turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her sitting on the counter, her heart hammering, her lips tingling. He had not taken, he had not demanded, he had offered. And for the first time in her life, she realized she was the one with all the power. The kiss in the kitchen had been a detonation. In the days that followed, Rachel tried to rebuild her walls, but the foundation was cracked. She threw herself into her work, her professionalism a shield. She called him Mr. Rossi, her voice crisp, her gaze averted. She handed him reports, careful not to let their fingers brush. She was staff, she was staff, she was staff. But the word was hollow. He did not press her. He had given his word, "When you are ready." And Dominic Rossi, she was learning, was a man whose words were currency. But the space between them had become a live wire. Every look was charged. Every silence was filled with the memory of his lips, the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. He would walk into a room, and the air would change. She would feel his presence before she saw him. He would ask her a question about a vendor, and his low voice would seem to vibrate in her bones. Once, she was balancing a stack of portfolios, and he put his hand on her arm to steady her. The touch was brief, professional, but his warmth lingered for an hour, a brand against her skin. She found herself watching his hands, remembering how they had felt in her hair. She watched his mouth, remembering how it had felt on hers. She was losing. This careful, fragile piece she had found was being dismantled, not by force, but by a quiet, relentless tenderness. He found her late one evening in the main office, a pool of light from her desk lamp, the only illumination in the vast, dark room. She was staring at a spreadsheet, her eyes burning, her head pounding. She had not had a full night's sleep in a week. He did not knock. He just appeared in the doorway, a dark silhouette. "You are going to burn yourself out, Rachel." She jumped, her hand flying to her chest. "Mr. Rossi, you startled me." "It's Dominic," he said, his voice soft. He stepped into the light. He had undone his tie, and it was hanging loosely around his neck. "And you are not working. You are staring." "I'm fine, just finalizing the quarterly budget." He walked over, his presence sucking the air from the room. He did not look at the spreadsheet. He looked at her. He saw the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "No, you are not." He leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. "I have a cabin, north, in the mountains. It's quiet." I can't," she said, her mind immediately flying to all the reasons. "The invoices, the spring schedule. Sophia can handle the invoices, and the spring schedule can wait 48 hours. He was not asking. He was not commanding, either. He was Stating a fact. I go there to breathe. You look like you have forgotten how... She looked up at him, her defenses crumbling. I don't think... I'll be driving up tomorrow morning. 6 o'clock, he said, as if she had already agreed. Pack a bag, something warm. Good night, Rachel. He turned and walked out, leaving her in the ringing silence. She should have been terrified. He was taking her away, isolating her. It was a classic, controlling move. It was everything Marco would have done. But her heart, her stupid, traitorous heart, was not afraid. It was hopeful. The next morning, she was at the main door at 5:59, a single duffel bag at her feet. He was waiting, in a black, unassuming SUV. Not his usual armored sedan. He was wearing jeans, worn and comfortable, and a dark Henley that made his shoulders look impossibly broad. He took her bag from her, his fingers brushing hers, and placed it in the back. No guards, she noted, her voice quiet. No guards, he confirmed, opening her door. No phones, he tapped his pocket. They stay in the car, just air. The drive was silent for the first hour, the city's gray armor giving way to the green, rolling hills of the countryside. The silence was not awkward. It was comfortable, a shared space. As the mountains rose around them, she felt the knot of tension in her shoulders begin to unwind. Vertebrae by vertebrae. The cabin was not a cabin. It was a house, but it was not a mansion. It was made of dark wood and river stone, built into the side of a mountain, overlooking a vast, empty valley. It was solid. It was simple. It was, she realized, him, inside. It was all wood beams, worn leather furniture, and a massive stone fireplace that was the heart of the room. It smelled like cedar and wood smoke and clean, cold air. This is, she started. My grandfather built it, he said, dropping their bags by the door. By hand, he was a stonemason before everything. There was an awkwardness now. In the estate, they had roles. Here, they were just a man and a woman in a house in the woods. I'm going for a hike, he said, nodding toward the door. There's a trail. You're welcome to join, or sleep. You look like you need it. A hike, she said, surprising herself. A hike sounds good. They walked for 2 hours, the trail winding up the mountain through dense pine. The only sounds were the crunch of their boots on the path and the high, lonely cry of a hawk. He was a strong, silent hiker, his pace steady, and she found herself falling into his rhythm. They did not talk about Marco. They did not talk about work. They talked about nothing. Meaningless, wonderful things. He told her he hated olives. She admitted she had never, in her entire life, seen a Star Wars movie. He stopped dead on the trail. Never, not one? He asked, a look of genuine, almost comical shock on his face. Never, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. I was busy. We are fixing that, he said, his tone dead serious. That is a flaw in your character, Miss Mendez. Is it? She found herself laughing, a real, actual laugh. It bubbled up out of her, light and strange. The sound of it echoed in the clear, mountain air. He stopped and looked at her, his dark eyes soft. The smile he gave her was not his public, thin smile. It was not even his small, amused smile. It was open, it was warm, and it hit her with the force of a physical blow. They reached the summit, a bald stone ridge that overlooked the world. They sat on a flat rock, sharing a bottle of water, their shoulders not quite touching. She was smiling, a free, easy smile. She watched the hawk circling below them, and then, as if a cloud had passed over the sun, the smile faded, the guilt rushed in. He noticed, of course, he noticed everything. What is it? He asked, his voice low. It just... She shook her head, embarrassed. It feels wrong to be this happy, to be sitting on a mountain after everything. I feel guilty. He was quiet for a long time, just watching the valley. He took your sense of safety, Dominic said, his voice a low rumble. "He took your money. He took your home. Do not let him have this, too. Do not let him take your right to be happy." He turned, his gaze intense. "He does not own this, Rachel. He does not own your joy. It's not his to take. It's yours. You are allowed to be happy without guilt. You are allowed to breathe." She looked at him, the man the world called a monster, and all she saw was kindness, a deep, profound, and unwavering kindness. She had no words. She just nodded, a tear slipping from her eye. He did not move to wipe it away. He just let her have the moment. They returned to the cabin as the sun was setting, the sky a blaze of orange and violet. They were tired, their muscles aching in a good way. They made dinner together, a simple meal of pasta and salad. They moved around the small kitchen, a comfortable, domestic dance, bumping elbows, passing salt, their bodies, now attuned to each other, moved in easy harmony. After dinner, the temperature dropped, the wind picked up, howling around the corners of the stone house, and then the rain came. A heavy, driving downpour that lashed against the windows, sealing them in. Dominic built a fire, a huge, crackling fire that filled the room with warmth and the smell of pine. Rachel curled on the massive, worn leather couch, a thick wool blanket tucked around her. He sat in the armchair opposite her, a glass of dark whiskey in his hand, and just watched the flames. The air was thick with anticipation. The silence, which had been comfortable, was now charged. It was the kitchen, all over again. The question, when you are ready, hung in the air. She was ready. She was so tired of being afraid. She was so tired of being broken. She wanted to be real. She stood, the blanket falling from her shoulders. He looked up, his eyes dark in the firelight. She walked over to him, her heart a heavy, slow drum in her chest. She did not sit at his feet. She did not kneel. She stood in front of him, and she was the one who reached out. She put her hand on his face, her fingers tracing the sharp, strong line of his jaw. The stubble was rough against her palm. "You're not who I thought you were," she whispered, the words lost in the sound of the rain. He did not move, but she felt him tense. He turned his head, his lips pressing a kiss into her palm. A jolt, hot and sudden, shot up her arm. "Who did you think I was?" he asked, his voice rough. "A cage," she whispered. "A monster, a boss." And now his hand came up, covering hers, holding it to his face. "Now," she said, her voice shaking, "I just see Dominic." She leaned in and kissed him. It was not the slow, hesitant kiss of the kitchen. This was a choice. This was a surrender. She kissed him with all the fear, all the loneliness, all the desperate, pent-up longing of a woman who had been starving. He did not take. He met her. His other hand came up, tangling in her hair, his fingers gentle. The kiss was deep and slow and deliberate. It was a promise. He stood, and he did it so smoothly. He lifted her. Her feet left the floor as he brought her against him, his mouth never leaving hers. She wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms around his neck, clinging to him. He was so strong, so solid. He was an anchor. He carried her from the firelight into the darkness of the bedroom. The only light was the moon, casting pale, silver light through the window. The rain a constant, rushing sound. He laid her on the bed, on the soft, cool sheets, and for a second, he just looked at her, his chest heaving. "Rachel," he whispered, her name a prayer. And then he came down to her. He made love to her with a reverence that almost broke her. This was not the greedy, selfish taking she had known. This was worship. Every touch was slow. Every kiss was deliberate. His hands, the strong, capable hands that ran a criminal empire, trembled. They trembled as they moved over her, as if he were touching something infinitely precious, something he was afraid he might break. He kissed her mouth, her jaw, her throat, the hollow of her collarbone. "You are so beautiful," he whispered against her skin, and she believed him. She, in turn, was brave. Her hands, which had only ever known to fight, learned to explore. She explored him. She found the scars, a thin, silvery line on his ribs, a puckered, round scar on his shoulder. Tattoos, a dark, intricate script she could not read, covered his left side. She traced them, every one with her fingertips. She was accepting him, all of him, the dark, the light, the man. It was not just desire, it was need. It was a deep, profound, earth-shattering need to be seen, to be held, to be real. When he finally moved over her, his eyes locked on hers. It was not a taking, it was a fusion. It was a slow, deliberate, emotional collision that was not about pleasure, but about healing. It was about her, finally, letting someone in. It was about him, finally, letting someone see him. She clung to him, her body meeting his rhythm in a desperate, silent conversation. And as the storm raged outside, the storm inside her finally, completely broke. She slept. For the first time, she did not just pass out from exhaustion. She slept deeply. And for the first time in years, she did not dream of falling. She slept in his arms, her head on his chest, his heart beating a steady, solid rhythm beneath her ear. His arms were a fortress, but they were not a cage. She was finally, completely safe. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sounds of a house at peace. The rain had stopped. The sun was streaming through the window. She was smiling. She woke up smiling. She realized it, and her smile widened. She was tangled in the sheets, and in him, he was still asleep, his face relaxed, younger, vulnerable. She stayed still, just happy, freely, without guilt. The drive back was different. They were not boss and staff. They were not even lovers. They were something new, something quiet and strong. They held hands across the console of the SUV, their fingers laced together. As they pulled through the massive iron gates of the estate, the sun was high. It was a beautiful day. Luca met the car before Dominic had even turned off the engine. His face was not calm. It was pale, his jaw tight. Dominic was out of the car in an instant, the dawn slipping back over him like a coat of armor. What is it? Mr. Rossi, Luca said, his voice low, tense. We have a situation, a perimeter breach. Rachel's blood ran cold. She got out of the car, her newfound peace evaporating like mist. Where? Dominic's voice was ice. The west wall, Luca said, his eyes flicking to Rachel. Just for a second, by Miss Mendez's apartment. He was here? Rachel whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. He tripped the silent alarm at 3 o'clock this morning, Luca said, his voice grim. He was not alone. He must have had help on the inside. He wounded one of our men. Tony, the new kid, a knife to the arm. He's stable. He'll be fine. And Marco? Dominic's voice was a lethal whisper. Sloppy, Luca said, his lip curling in disgust. Tony got a piece of him. He fled, left a blood trail. And this. Luca held up a small, plastic evidence bag. Inside it, glinting in the sun, was a single, gaudy, gold cufflink. Marco's? Dominic stared at it, his face a mask of such cold, still fury that Rachel almost recoiled. He was livid. It's my fault, Rachel burst out, the words tumbling. The guilt, the one he had just told her she could banish, came rushing back, suffocating her. I brought him here. If I hadn't... That guard, Tony, he's hurt because of me. Oh, God. Dominic moved, crossing to her in 2 strides. He grabbed her by the shoulders, his grip hard, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were black, but the fury was not for her. Blah, this is not you, he growled, his voice a low, terrifying vibration. Do you hear me? This is on him. He put his hands on my home. He hurt my man. He came for you. He pulled her against him, his embrace fierce, possessive. It was not a hug. It was a claim. "This is on him," he whispered into her hair, his voice breaking with a controlled, lethal rage. "Not you. Never you." The world shrank. The open, sunlit air of the mountain cabin was a distant memory, a cruel dream. The moment they stepped back inside the estate, the walls did not just close in, they sealed. Dominic moved, no longer the man in jeans who laughed at stupid jokes. He was the silent Dawn. His voice was a low, cold instrument of command. "Lock it down, Haz," he said to Luca. "No one in or out. Full security sweep. I want every inch of this property cleared. Double the perimeter guards. I want eyes on every shadow." The house, usually a place of quiet, professional humming, became a fortress. Steel-plated shutters Rachel did not even know existed slid down over the inside of the windows in the main living areas, plunging the grand halls into an artificial twilight. Guards were no longer just at the doors. They were in the hallways, their presence a constant, armed reminder of the breach. Dominic's men moved with terrifying efficiency. Rachel was a ghost in their midst, the cause of all this chaos. The guilt was a physical weight, pressing on her chest, making it hard to breathe. He found her in the main hall, pacing, her hands clenched. "You need to stay somewhere safe," he said. His voice was flat, all business. "I'm in my apartment." "No, not safe enough. The breach was too close to your wing." He motioned to Angelo. "Take her to the safe room. Stay with her. Do not let her out of your sight." The safe room?" she echoed, her blood turning to ice. It was not a room. It was a vault, hidden behind a false wall in his study. It was a concrete and steel box, albeit one furnished with a luxurious bed, a bathroom, and a fully stocked bar. The air was recycled, humming. The door was 4 inches of solid steel. Angelo stood outside it. "Mr. Rossi's orders. Miss Mendez. I'll be right here if you need anything." The door closed with a heavy, hydraulic thud and the sickening, final click of a magnetic lock. She was in a cage, a beautiful, expensive, inescapable cage. She sat on the edge of the silk-covered bed, her reflection staring back at her from a smoke-glass mirror. This feeling. She knew this feeling. The quiet room, the controlled air, the heavy door, the man on the other side, protecting her. Marco had done this. After the waiter incident, he had locked her in their penthouse bedroom for 3 days. "To keep you safe," he had cooed through the door. "Safe from yourself, safe for me." She was going to be sick. The guilt she felt for Tony, the guard, was consumed by a new, hotter, more primal emotion, rage. She waited. She did not know how long. Time did not exist in the box. 1 hour, 3. It felt like a lifetime. Finally, the lock clicked. Dominic entered. He looked exhausted. His suit jacket gone, his tie loosened. He had come to check on his possession. "The house is clean," he said, his voice rough. "We found the point of entry. It will not happen again." "Let me out," she said. Her voice was quiet, dead. He paused. "Not yet. Not until we find him." "Let me out, Dominic." She stood, her body thrumming with a cold, clear fury. "Rachel, this is not a discussion. This is for your safety." "My safety?" She laughed, a high, brittle sound that scared even her. "Or your control? Is there a difference?" He recoiled, his face hardening. "You do not know what you are saying. You are upset." "Oh, I am upset," she said, walking toward him, invading his space, her finger jabbing the air between them. "I am upset that I was stupid enough to believe this was different, a better-dressed monster. A prettier cage, but it's the same, isn't it? You lock me up, for my own good. You have your men watch me. You decide where I go, who I see, when I am safe." He was hurt. She saw it, a deep, visible fissure in his armor. His eyes, which had been hard with command, became dark with a pain that almost made her stop. But she could not. The poison was in her, and it had to come out. "Do not," he started, his voice a low warning. "Do not what?" Tell the truth, she spat. You are just like him, just like Marco. He wanted to own me, and you. You just want to protect me. It's the same word. Dominic, it's the same lock on the door. He did not yell. He did not move. He let her words hit him. Each one a physical blow. He let her speak. He let her empty all the rage, all the terror, all the poison she had held inside, not just from Marco, but from him. When her anger finally broke, it broke completely. The fury evaporated, leaving behind the raw, terrified thing it had been hiding. She was not angry. She was terrified. She collapsed, her hands flying to her face, her sobs echoing in the small, soundproof room. I cannot be a thing again. She wept, the words torn from her. I cannot be a possession. I cannot be someone's broken bird. I would rather he... She could not finish. She sank to the floor, her body heaving. He was there, in an instant. He knelt in front of her, not touching, his hands clenched into fists on his knees. His face was a mask of agony. Look at me, he commanded, but his voice was thick. She shook her head, unable to look at him, ashamed of her words, ashamed of her fear. Rachel, look at me. She finally, slowly, lifted her tear-stained face. His eyes were raw. He wanted to own you, he said, his voice a rough whisper. I just want you safe. If it felt the same, then I am... He could not finish. He closed his eyes, a muscle in his jaw jumping. He opened them. The pain was gone, replaced by a fierce, undeniable, soul-deep promise. You are not mine, he said, his voice absolute. You are not a possession. You are not a thing. You are Rachel. He reached out, his hand trembling, and put 2 fingers under her chin, lifting it. But I will protect you like you are, until you tell me to stop. She stared at him, her sobs catching in her throat. He was not giving her an order. He was not making a statement. He was giving her the power. He was handing her the keys to her own cage. Until you tell me to stop, he repeated, his voice breaking. And if you tell me to stop, I will, I swear it, but God, do not tell me to stop. The last word was a plea. She surged forward, her mouth crashing onto his. It was not a kiss. It was an answer. It was a release. It was a desperate, messy, tear-fueled collision. She kissed him with everything she had, her fear, her rage, her gratitude, her love. She was not staff. She was not a possession. She was his equal, and she was choosing. She clung to him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer as if she could absorb him, as if she could merge with him and never be alone again. His response was just as fierce. His arms wrapped around her, crushing her to him, lifting her from the floor as he stood. His mouth was not gentle. It was hungry. It was a desperate, raw claiming. He was not claiming her. He was claiming this moment, this shared, broken, terrifying space between them. He backed her against the wall, his hand tangled in her hair, his body a hard, solid line against hers. The kiss was all teeth and tongue and desperation. She tasted the salt of her own tears on his lips. She felt the shudder that ran through his entire body as she clawed at his back, not in passion, but in a desperate need to hold on to something real. Their intimacy was a storm. It was not the slow, healing lovemaking of the cabin. It was a fierce, desperate act of survival. It was a promise, sealed in skin. He tore at his shirt buttons, his eyes never leaving hers, a dark, primal need in them. She met his gaze, her own need just as stark. He lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist, and he carried her to the bed, their mouths never breaking contact. It was a frantic, wordless conversation. You are real. I am here. You are not alone. I am not leaving. Every touch was a statement. Every gasp was an affirmation. It was a desperate, emotional purge, a fire that burned away the last of her old fears and forged something new, something hard and bright and unbreakable, in their place. When it was over, they lay tangled in the sheets, their bodies slick, their breath coming in ragged gasps. He did not let her go. He held her against his chest, his heart hammering against her ear, his arm a heavy, possessive bar over her waist. But it was not a cage. It was an anchor. "I will not let him touch you again," he whispered into the darkness. "I know," she whispered back, and she did. The hunt was on. The estate was still locked down, but Rachel was no longer in the safe room. She was at his side. She sat in his study, a silent shadow, as he gave orders. He did not shield her from it. He did not treat her like a child. He let her be a part of it. "He's wounded, Dominic said to his men who were gathered around the desk. "He's bleeding, and he is sloppy. He has help. Someone on the inside. Find them." "We're tracking his credit cards, boss," Lucas said. "But he's gone to ground, the blood trail. It went cold a mile from here. He got into a car." "He will surface," Dominic said, his voice cold. "He's an arrogant, stupid man. He's not a professional. He wants her. He's not running from us. He is preparing to try again. Find him before he moves." The men scattered. For a day, there was nothing, just a tense, humming silence. Rachel stayed close to Dominic. They ate together. They worked in his study. He slept on the couch in his office, and she slept in the guest room adjoining it, the door between them left wide open. On the second night, she was pacing the study, unable to sleep. When Luca and Angelo returned, they did not see her in the shadows of the library annex. They were reporting to Dominic, their voices low and urgent. "We found him, boss," Luca said. "The helper, it was a temp gardener. Fired him 3 weeks ago. Marco paid him for the security codes. He's been using a burner phone. We tracked the pings." "Where?" Dominic's voice was lethal. "A tenement, old meatpacking district," Angelo rumbled. 122 South Canal Street, 4th floor. He's there. We saw him. He's alone." "Good," Dominic said. "Lock it down. I want a 4-man team. We go in 1 hour." "Boss," Luca said, "let us handle this. It's just Marco." "He put his hands on this house," Dominic said, his voice flat. "He put his hands on her. I will handle this. Get the car." They left? Rachel stepped out of the shadows, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. 122 South Canal Street. She was tired of being afraid. She was tired of being protected. She was tired of being the woman who was handled. She had been a victim. She had been a survivor. But she had never, not once, stood up for herself. She had run. She had hidden. She had been saved. No more. She did not know what she was going to do. Yell at him? Spit in his face? She did not know. But she knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that she had to be the one to end this. She had to face him. Not Dominic's men, not Dominic, her. She waited 10 minutes. She knew the house. She knew the blind spots. She slipped out the kitchen service entrance. A dark, hooded jacket she had grabbed from the mudroom pulled over her head. The guard there, a man named Sal, knew her. "Miss Mendez, Mr. Rossi's orders?" "I forgot my medication in my apartment," she lied, her voice shaking. "I'll be right back. Please, Dominic he'll be angry if I bother him." The guard hesitated. He saw the woman Dominic was now sleeping with, the new mistress of the house. He did not want to cause trouble. He nodded and let her pass into the courtyard. She did not go to her apartment. She went to the garage. She knew Luca's codes. She knew which of the cars had the keys. She took a simple black sedan, not the armored ones. She slid out of a side gate, the sensor beeping once, a sound that was lost in the night. She drove, her knuckles white, her heart a cold stone. 122 South Canal Street. She found it, a run-down brick building, the windows dark, the streetlights broken. This was it. She parked a block away, her breath misting in the cold air. She got out. She was shaking, but but she did not stop. She was tired of being afraid. She was tired of being afraid. She walked toward the building. She was 50 feet from the door. A car, headlights off, screeched to a halt, cutting her off, blocking her path to the door. Dominic flew out of the driver's side. He was not wearing a suit. He was in black tactical gear, a dark, terrifying shadow. He did not look like a businessman. He looked like what he was, a killer. But his face was not angry. It was white. It was a mask of raw, undiluted terror. "Rachel!" He yelled her name, and it was not a command. It was not a shout. It was a scream. It was the sound of a man watching the entire world fall off a cliff. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, grabbing her, pulling her against his hard, armored chest. He was shaking. Or she was. She could not tell. He buried his face in her hair, his arms a vice around her, holding her so tightly she could not breathe. "What were you thinking?" he yelled, his voice muffled. "What were you... I thought... Dio... I thought..." He could not speak. He was terrified. He had not been angry. He had been terrified of losing her. The adrenaline, the false bravado, the desperate need to be strong, it all drained out of her at once, leaving her knees weak. She burst into sobs, a different kind of tears, not anger, not fear, just release. She collapsed against him, her fists clutching the front of his vest. "I was so tired," she sobbed into his chest. "I was so tired of being afraid." He held her, just held her, his body a fortress, his heart hammering against hers. He stroked her hair, his big hand shaking. He pulled back, just enough to look at her, his dark eyes wet in the dim light. "You are not alone anymore," he whispered, his voice rough. "You do not ever have to be strong again. Let me be strong for you." He held her, his body a shield against the dark street, his own terror a living thing between them. His men, Luca and Angelo, were shadows, materialized from the car, their faces grim, their hands on their weapons, their eyes scanning the dark, derelict building. "Boss," Luca said, his voice a low, urgent warning. "We have to move. Now." Dominic did not release her. He kept his face buried in her hair, his arms a steel-banded cage. "Get her in the car," he growled. No. The word was a whisper, but it cut through the night. He pulled back, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. "Rachel, this is not a game. Get in the damn car." "No," she said again, her voice stronger. She pulled away from him, her hands still clutching his tactical vest. She was shaking, but her eyes were not. They were clear and hard and utterly resolved. "I am not going to sit in a car. I am not going to be protected. I am tired of being afraid." "You are not being afraid. You are being stupid," he roared, his fear making his voice crack. "He is up there. He is an animal. And I have been running from him my entire life," she said, her voice dropping, becoming as cold and still as his. "I am not running anymore. You are going up there to handle this. And I am going to watch. I have to see it end. With my own eyes. Or I will never be free." He stared at her, seeing not the woman he had just held as she sobbed, but a woman made of a steel he had never encountered. He saw a survivor who was demanding, finally, to be a victor. He saw the strength he had always known was there. He looked at Luca. He looked at Angelo. He looked back at her. "Fine," he bit out. "But you do not speak. You do not move. You stand where I tell you to stand. You do not exist. You are a ghost. Is that clear?" "Crystal," she said. He nodded. A single, sharp jerk. He turned to his men. "Angelo, on the door. Luca, with us. She stays between us at all times. No one gets within 10 feet of her." They moved as a unit. Angelo melted into the shadows of the building's entrance. Dominic put his hand on the small of Rachel's back, a familiar, possessive, protective gesture, and propelled her forward. Luca was a silent shadow on her other side. The building smelled of mold, urine, and decay. The stairwell was dark, the single bulb on the third-floor landing flickering. They took the stairs, their footsteps silent on the concrete. On the fourth floor, the hallway was a long, dark tunnel, a single, yellow light spilling from a door at the far end, 122 South Canal Street. Dominic did not knock. He raised his foot and kicked the door open. It slammed against the interior wall with a crack of splintering wood. The three of them were in the room in an instant, a triangle of silent, lethal force. The room was a horror, a filthy mattress on the floor, greasy takeout containers, a single bare bulb, and him. Marco was huddled in a chair, a bottle of cheap whiskey in his hand. His left arm was wrapped in a bloody, makeshift bandage. He looked up, his eyes wide, his face a mask of terror. He saw Dominic, a dark armored giant in the doorway, and he whimpered. Then he saw Rachel, standing just behind Dominic's shoulder. And the terror evaporated. It was replaced by the familiar, oily, arrogant sneer. He had nothing left to lose. Well, Marco slurred, a pathetic attempt at bravado. Look at this, the king, and his new queen, come to visit the peasants? Dominic was a statue of black, cold rage. Get up, Marco! Why? Marco said, taking a swig of whiskey. So you can shoot me? Is that it? Don Rossi? Is that what you do? Come to a man's home, kick in his door? Oh, wait. This is not my home. You took my home. You took my... His eyes slid to Rachel, a look of such violation that she felt her stomach clench. You took my wife. She was never yours. Dominic's voice was a low growl. Oh, she was. Marco laughed, a high, thin, terrible sound. She was mine in every way you can imagine. Ask her about the nights she... Dominic moved. It was not a step. It was a blur. He crossed the room, his hand grabbing Marco by the throat, lifting him from the chair and slamming him against the peeling, water-stained wall. The bottle smashed to the floor. Do not, Dominic hissed, his voice a vibration of pure, lethal intent. Speak her name. Marco choked, his feet dangling, his face turning a mottled purple. He clawed at Dominic's hand, his eyes bulging. He can't, Rachel whispered, her hand on Luca's arm. It's his to finish, miss, Luca said, his voice flat, his eyes on his boss. Marco, with his last, gagging breath, looked past Dominic at Rachel. What's the matter? Dawn? He wheezed. You like my leftovers? You like buying women? Like furniture? Dominic's hand tightened. The sound of Marco's gurgling filled the room. Is she good for you? Marco choked out. I taught her. Everything. Dominic's other hand went to his side. He was going to end it. He was going to snap his neck. He was going to become the monster Marco accused him of being. Dominic? Rachel said his name. It was not a plea. It was not a command. It was a statement. He froze. His head turned, just enough. He saw her. She was not looking at Marco, the man who had tormented her, with fear. She was not cowering. Her face was pale, but she was looking at him, and in her eyes, he did not see terror. He saw trust. He saw the woman who had slept in his arms. He saw the woman who had laughed on the mountain. He saw the woman who had told him, "You're not who I thought you were." She was not asking him to save her. She was asking him not to become him. He looked at Marco's purple, choking face. He looked at the filth of the room. He looked at the life he was about to extinguish. He saw nothing. And he let go. He dropped Marco, who collapsed to the floor, a gagging, coughing, pathetic heap. Dominic stepped back, wiping his hand on his tactical pants, as if he had touched something diseased. He straightened his vest. The dawn was gone. The cold, controlled, intelligent man who ran an empire was back. Blood is messy, Marco, Dominic said, his voice now calm, almost conversational. And you are not worth the stain. Marco looked up, his eyes wide, confused. "You see, you are a monster," Dominic continued, his voice light. "But more than that, you are a thief, and you are a stupid one." He pulled a phone from his pocket, touched the screen, and tossed it onto the mattress. A spreadsheet glowed on the screen. $2.4 million, Dominic said. "That is what you embezzled from your last employer, the shipping firm. You thought you were so clever, hiding it in offshore accounts, the same accounts you used to hire the temp gardener you tried to pay to get you into my house. You are a cliché, Marco." Marco's face, if possible, and went paler. I do not know." "You thought I was looking for a husband," Dominic said, his lip curling. "I was not. I was looking for a white-collar criminal, and you left a trail a child could follow." As if on cue, the sound of sirens filled the night, but they were not the whoop of city police. They were the long, deep, federal wail. Heavy, pounding footsteps came up the stairs. The door, already broken, was kicked wide. 2 men in dark suits, FBI emblazoned in yellow on their vests, entered. They did not look at Dominic. They did not look at Rachel. They looked at Marco. "Marco Leonetti?" the first agent said, his voice booming. Marco was silent, frozen in shock. "Mr. Leonetti, you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." The agents hauled the still coughing Marco to his feet, yanking his one good arm behind his back, the plastic zip of the handcuffs a final, clean, devastating sound. You did this," Marco whispered, his eyes on Dominic. He was not looking at the man who had almost killed him. He was looking at the man who had, in the end, destroyed him. "Justice," Dominic said, his voice cold. "Not blood, it lasts longer." They dragged Marco out, his protests lost in the stairwell. The apartment was silent, except for the dripping of the broken bottle. Luca let out a long, slow breath. That boss was a different kind of move. Dominic did not answer. He turned to Rachel. She was standing in the same spot, her hands at her sides. She was not crying, she was still. He walked to her, his hard, tactical gear a stark contrast to the vulnerability in his eyes. He stopped a foot in front of her. He did not touch her. "It is over," he said. She looked up at him, at this man who wielded power like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer, the man who had held his rage, held his power, for her. She did not thank him, not yet. She just nodded, once. And then she turned and walked out of the room, leaving the filth, the smell, and the past behind. They drove back to the estate in silence. The sun was just beginning to touch the sky, painting the horizon in shades of pale, fragile pink. The iron gates of the estate, which had once looked like a cage, now looked like a sanctuary. He did not take her to her apartment. He led her to his study, the room where it had all begun. The house was quiet, the staff not yet awake. He poured 2 glasses of brandy, his hand, she noted, perfectly steady. He handed one to her. She took a sip. The liquid fire was a shock, but it was grounding. "You could have," she said, her voice a low rasp. "In that room, you could have ended him. No one would have ever known." "I would have known," he said, staring into his glass. "And you would have known. You would have been watching a monster. Just a different one." "You did it for me," she whispered. He looked up, his dark eyes raw. "He was not worth the complications," he said, trying to use the old words. She shook her head, a small, sad smile touching her lips. "No, you did it for me. You showed him that real power is not that." She took a step closer. "You showed me." She put her hand on his arm, over the hard muscle. The first time she had initiated a touch outside of passion. "I trust you, Dominic." She saw his throat work, saw him swallow. That terrifies me," she admitted, her voice shaking. "But I want to stay. Here, with you." She met his gaze, her own unwavering, not his staff. He did not speak. The relief that washed over his face was so profound, so total, that it was as if he had been holding his breath for months. He had won wars, he had built an empire, but this small, quiet, terrified, strong woman saying she trusted him, this was his only victory. He put his glass down, he took her hand, the one that was not on his arm. He laced his fingers with hers, a simple, profound gesture, a claim, a promise. He did not kiss her. He did not pull her into an embrace. He just held her hand, and he led her from the study, through the silent, sleeping house. He led her past her old apartment wing. He led her up the grand, sweeping staircase. He led her to his own rooms, the massive, private suite she had never seen. He was not her boss. He was not her protector. He was the man who was, finally, leading her home. Months passed, the seasons turned, autumn's gold gave way to the crisp, clean white of winter, and then melted into the vibrant, hopeful green of spring. Rachel Mendez no longer existed. In her place was Rachel Rossi, not in name, not yet, but in every other way that mattered. She was no longer the live-in event coordinator. She was the executive director of the Rossi Family Foundation. She sat at the head of a massive, polished mahogany boardroom table. 10 men, all of them older, all of them powerful, listened as she spoke. She was not the woman who had stood trembling in a storage unit. She was not the woman who had flinched at a raised voice. She was poised. She was articulate. She was, in every way, in command. She had taken the Julia Rossi Garden and turned it into an initiative that was building rooftop sanctuaries at 3 different hospitals. She spoke with passion. She spoke with authority. And when she was done, the entire room, men who did not clap for anyone, applauded. She and Dominic lived in a world of quiet, respected partnership. They were a unit, the staff, who had once whispered, now watched them with a deep, profound respect. He was the dawn, the iron fist. She was the heart, the quiet guiding hand of his legitimate world. They were 2 halves of a whole, and the world they had built was one of peace. One night, late in the spring, Dominic found her in the library. The house was quiet. He had just returned from a long, difficult meeting. He was tired. She was not reading. She was standing by the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the gardens, which were in full bloom. The moonlight streamed in, making her pale cotton robe seem to glow. He paused in the doorway, his heart, as it always did, clenching at the sight of her. She was crying. He was at her side in an instant, his fatigue vanishing, replaced by the old, familiar, protective chill. "Rachel, what is it? What is wrong?" He tilted her chin up, his mind racing. Was it a memory? Was it him? Had someone... She looked up at him, and she was smiling. Her face was wet with tears, but her mouth was curved in a small, radiant, undeniable smile. "Nothing is wrong," she whispered, her voice thick. I was just in a board meeting today, and Mr. Vescovi, the old, grumpy one, he called me an asset to this city. And then Lucia left me a gardenia, and you looked at me." "I'm sorry," he began, confused. "No," she said, laughing, her tears still falling. She put her hand on his chest, right over his heart. "You looked at me. When you came home, not like I was a broken thing you had fixed, not like I was a problem you had solved. You just looked at me, like you were happy I was here." She shook her head, a fresh wave of tears spilling. I just never thought," she sobbed, a small, happy, broken sound. "I just never thought kindness, real quiet, everyday kindness, could feel this overwhelming." He pulled her in, his arms wrapping around her, a solid, permanent wall. He buried his face in her hair, his own eyes burning. He had fought. He had killed. He had built an empire. But he had never, until this moment, understood peace. He held her, the woman who had seen his worst and called it by name, the woman who had seen his best and called it home. "It is yours, mia vida," he whispered, his voice rough. "It is yours, forever." Thank you for listening to this story. I hope it kept you on the edge of your seat. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below. This story was brought to you by Mafia Romance Stories. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel and do not forget to share your thoughts about Rachel and Dominic's journey. We love hearing from you.